The Roman Empire. At the height of its power, its armies had crushed Carthage, subdued Greece, and stretched across the Mediterranean world. Its legions were said to be invincible, a steel-clad beast that could annihilate any army of the day. But in the year 9 AD, deep within the cold, dark forests of Germania, Rome's confidence was shattered. 3 legions marched into a trap from which they could not escape. What followed was not a battle, but a massacre. An ambush that destroyed nearly 20,000 men, ended Rome's dreams of conquest in the north, and changed the map of Europe forever. This is the story of the Battle of Teutoburg Forest. By the 1st century AD, the Roman Empire dominated much of Europe, North Africa, and the Near East. Yet Augustus, Rome's first emperor, wanted more. To the north, beyond the Rhine River, lay Germania, vast, dark, and wild. The Romans viewed it as a land of savages, populated with scattered tribes without cities or stone walls. But Germania also promised farmland, resources, and a natural frontier at the River Elbe. For Augustus, expansion into Germania was the logical next step. Secure the Rhine, push to the Elbe, and Rome's borders would rest on mighty rivers, much harder for enemies to cross. By 7 AD, much of western Germania appeared subdued. Roman garrisons were stationed, towns began to form, and local chieftains swore their allegiance to the emperor. All seemed to suggest that Germania would be the newest addition to the empire. However, a different fate awaited it. To govern this frontier, Augustus chose Publius Quinctilius Varus. An experienced administrator, Varus had once ruled Syria, where Roman power was virtually unchallenged. However, Germania was no Syria. Varus commanded 3 full legions, the 17th, the 18th, and the 19th. Alongside them marched cavalry, auxiliaries recruited from allied tribes, and engineers to help build forts and roads. In all, about 20,000 troops, plus several thousand camp followers and families, created a moving community under arms. The Roman legion was the most sophisticated military machine of the ancient world. Each legionary carried a short sword, the gladius, and 2 heavy throwing spears called pila. Their shield, the scudum, was a curved rectangle of layered wood, covered in leather and rimmed with iron. Armor varied. Some wore chainmail, lorica hamata. Others the iconic segmented plate armor, the lorica segmentata. But weapons alone did not make Rome great. The true strength of the legions was their discipline and their order. In open fields, legions formed impenetrable walls of shields, their pila breaking enemy charges before their short swords finished the fight. Engineers built siege engines, artillery, and marching camps with clockwork precision. This is the system that had crushed Carthage, conquered Gaul, and cowed the entire Hellenistic East. To Roman commanders, Germania was just another frontier to pacify. The people of Germania lived very differently from the Romans. They had no great cities, no marble temples, and no roads. Villages were small clusters of wooden houses and forest clearings. Tribes were bound by blood and oath, each loyal to its own chieftain. To the Romans, they were barbarians. But these so-called barbarians were formidable fighters. They carried long spears, light oval shields, bows, and javelins. Many also wielded single-edged swords or axes. Their strength lay in their mobility. Lightly armored, they could vanish into the woods, strike suddenly, and then melt away. They fought not as machine-like units, but as fierce individuals, competing for glory in battle. The Germanic world was a deeply religious one. They worshipped in sacred groves where offerings were made to the gods dwelling in the trees and rivers. To fight in the forest was to fight in a holy place. Their gods were many. Donar the Thunderer, Wodan, god of wisdom and death, and Tiwaz, god of oaths and battle. They believed warriors slain in battle were chosen by the gods, their blood sanctifying the land. It was in this world that one man, Arminius of the Cherusci, rose to prominence. Arminius was no ordinary chieftain. As a boy, he was taken from Germania to Rome as a hostage. There he was educated, trained under Roman arms, and rose to the rank of an equestrian officer. He fought in several of Rome's wars, earning citizenship and Augustus's favor. But while he wore Roman armor, his loyalty remained with his people. He saw Rome's heavy taxes, its humiliating treatment of Germanic nobles, and its relentless expansion. Most of all, he understood Rome's weakness, its reliance on roads, formations, and open battlefields. In the nearly endless forests of Germania, that strength would become a liability. By 9 AD, Arminius had secretly forged a coalition of tribes. The Cherusci, the Bructeri, the Marsi, the Chatti, and others. These tribes that had normally feuded with each other were now united. The plan was to lure Varus and his legions into the forest and destroy them. In September, word reached Varus of a rebellion in the west. Arminius urged him to march his full force to suppress it. Varus trusted him. The legions broke camp. The column stretched for miles. Soldiers, cavalry, wagons, engineers, and families. Autumn rains began to fall. Roads soon dissolved into mud. Wagons broke and armor rusted. The spirits of the army began to sink. But Varus pressed on. 3 legions had little to fear, or so he thought. As the column wound through a narrow valley, the forest exploded. Germanic warriors burst from hiding, hurling spears, javelins, and stones. Shouts and war horns echoed through the trees. The Romans tried to form ranks, but the forest betrayed them. Shields clashed against the trunks. Pila caught in the branches. Horses bolted and wagons overturned. Rain turned the earth into a quagmire. Hundreds fell. By nightfall, the survivors huddled behind makeshift barricades, their confidence shattered. On the second day of the battle, the legions tried to march again. But the weather worsened. Torrential rain drowned their campfires. Germans felled trees to block the path, and skirmishes erupted at every turn. Lightly armed tribes darted in, loosed spears, and vanished. The heavily burdened Romans could not chase them. The discipline of the parade ground collapsed into chaos. That night, trenches flooded. Soldiers lay shivering and were surrounded by whispers in the dark. On the third day, exhausted and starving, the Romans tumbled into the Calcrisa Valley, a narrow strip of land between a large wooded hill and a bog. Here, Arminius had prepared earthen ramparts. Behind them, thousands of warriors lay waiting. The trap was soon closed. From rampart and forest, missiles rained down. Romans tried to charge, but the bog sucked them under. Cohorts broke apart, each cut down in turn. Varus, realizing all was lost, fell on his own sword. His officers soon followed suit. By dusk, the legions were no more. Stragglers fled, but the tribes hunted them like prey. Some were sacrificed to the gods, with their skulls nailed to the trees. 3 eagles, the sacred standards of the 17th, 18th, and 19th legions, were seized. To lose an eagle was worse than defeat. It was sacrilege. Rome's invincibility had been broken. Survivors staggered back to the Rhine. Panic soon swept the frontier. Back in Rome, Augustus tore his clothes and cried, "Quinctilius Varus, give me back my legions." The 17th, 18th, and 19th were never reformed. Their numbers were cursed and erased from the Roman army forever. Years later, Germanicus, heir to the empire, led punitive campaigns. Villages were burned, prisoners enslaved, and fields salted. At Teutoburg, he found the bones of the fallen still whitening in the open. Altars had been desecrated, and skulls were nailed in sacrifice. He buried the dead and recovered 2 of the lost eagles. But Germania remained unconquerable. Rome held the Rhine, and no further. For centuries, the exact location of the disaster was lost to memory. Ancient writers gave haunting accounts, but they never said precisely where it happened. Generations of scholars debated this. The silence of the forest concealed the truth. That was until the 20th century. In the late 1980s, a British officer and amateur archaeologist named Tony Clune was stationed in Germany. In his spare time, he searched the fields of Calcrisa with a metal detector. What he found would change history. Roman coins that were stamped with the name of Publius Quinctilius Varus. Nearby were lead sling bullets, unmistakably Roman. Clune had stumbled upon the ghost of Teutoburg. Since then, decades of excavation have uncovered a chilling record. Over 5,000 artifacts have been recovered. Iron nails from legionary sandals, spearheads, fragments of helmets, pieces of mail armor, and even surgical instruments. Human remains have also been discovered. Bones scarred by blades were found scattered, confirming Dio's account that the battlefield was left littered with corpses for years before burial. In addition, a long earthen rampart hastily thrown up by Germanic warriors was discovered. Its placement had trapped the Romans against a swampy plain, narrowing their movement and ensuring annihilation. Perhaps most haunting of all are the personal items. The gaming pieces, the belt buckles, and the bronze fittings from scabbards. They tell us not of faceless legions, but of individuals. Men who marched, joked, gambled, and prayed before being swallowed by the dark forest. Today, at Calcrisa Museum and Park, visitors can walk the field. Glass cases display twisted weapons, coins bearing Augustus's face, and the skull of a soldier split clean through. The quiet of the landscape makes the imagination stir. The clash of iron, the cries of men, and the relentless rain. Archaeology brings the ancient texts to life, turning myth into a tangible tragedy. Teutoburg was not only rediscovered by archaeologists, it was reborn in myth and politics. In the 16th century, scholars revisiting Tacticus identified Arminius as a national hero. They gave him the new name in the German tongue, Hermann. To them, Hermann symbolized freedom, the noble warrior who threw off the chains of Rome. This legend reached its height in the 19th century. After centuries of division, German states sought unity. Writers, poets, and politicians turned Hermann into a symbol of resistance and independence. The parallels were clear. Just as Hermann had freed Germania from Roman oppression, so too must modern Germans unite against foreign domination. Thus was born the Hermannsdenkmal, the Monument of Hermann. Rising 53 meters above the Teutoburg landscape, the colossal statue depicts Arminius in armor, sword raised defiantly towards the west, towards France, Rome's successor and later Germany's rival. When it was completed in 1875, the Hermannsdenkmal was a declaration of national pride, unity, and the memory of ancient victory. The monument became a pilgrimage site woven into schoolbooks, rallies, and cultural identity. During the World Wars, Hermann was invoked again as the eternal liberator. Only later in a post-war Europe did scholars step back, disentangling nationalist myth from the reality of the battlefield. Yet the statue still remains, towering over the forest. Visitors climb its base and look out over the hills, imagining both the Roman columns and the ambushing tribes. The Hermannsdenkmal is not just a monument to Arminius. It is a monument to how history itself is remembered, reshaped, and used. The Battle of Teutoburg Forest was more than just a disaster. It was the moment arrogance met reality, when Rome's steel shattered against the forest, and the fury of the tribes defending their land. In the mists of Teutoburg, we see not just a clash of arms, but the forging of Europe's destiny. a destiny that still lives with us more than 2,000 years later. In the mist, among the oaks and marshes, the ghosts of the 17th, 18th, and 19th remain. They provide a reminder of the price of hubris, and the day the empire met its match. Thank you for joining me today on History Imperium. Your continued viewership and support is incredibly important and highly valued as this channel grows. If there are any topics you would like me to delve into in future content, please feel free to comment in the videos or email me at the email found in the channel's bio. Thank you again for exploring the history of the Battle of Teutoburg Forest with me. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe for more historical information. Thanks again for watching, and I will see you in the next one.